All right, hi, Richard Moore here from 8-StepStartup. So lots of you have been sending through questions to me about sales related queries you have. That's brilliant, so keep them coming through. And some of you on the course already, 8-StepStartup, and some of you I think have just watched the YouTube videos I've popped up. And one of the questions I was asked yesterday relates to listening effectively. I think the person who sent it through is involved in telesales. So this is, of course, outbound phone calls, and he's on a commission job. And he asked me if I had any good techniques or advice relating to listening effectively. Now, I was actually teaching this yesterday in London. It's not entirely useful if I just say, well, just concentrate or listen harder. That's not really a great solution. There is a really good technique or set of techniques that I've used in the past that are quite straightforward, but it's just something to worth bearing in mind when you want to ensure that you're really taking on board everything. When I was in touch with Robin Terrell, he's on the board at Tesco and was the managing director of Amazon UK. He used to say that, and probably still does, that you got to learn everything you possibly can about your customer. And listening effectively is really the only way, or the best way, I believe, of getting as much from that interaction as possible. So if you get it right, you get the opportunity to sell effectively and not miss the point. You obviously get the opportunity to build confidence in you and build value, because you're talking about the things that matter to that person as well. So when it comes to listening effectively, what you want to do is, as I say when I teach, you want to stain your mind with the things that these people are saying so you don't miss anything. And so using that word stain, S.T.A.I.N, there's actually 5 things you can always remember to do. Again, really obvious, some of them, but they combined will make sure that you don't miss anything. So the first letter, S, in stain relates to stop talking. Okay, if someone is talking to you, you really should be closing your mouth. And what specifically I mean by this is the idea that if you are talking, about to talk, or thinking of talking, the brain isn't quite as engaged as it might be in listening, because you're gearing up to start communicating. And Carl Albrecht was a chap, as a German management consultant that wrote the book Social Intelligence. I was in touch with him a while back, and he was telling me about, I think in his book, in fact, he wasn't telling me, in his book he talks about how, there's, I think it's 500 words per minute that the brain has the bandwidth to understand. But when we speak at 120 to 150 words per minute, it means that basically we've got extra capacity or bandwidth that the brain can make use of, which is why we're often kind of led to distraction and doing other things. But what this means in real terms is your brain is able to process ahead of time what the message actually is. So how many times have you had someone speaking to you and in your mind you're like, I know what they're about to say. Yeah, I've got it. It's because your brain's leapt ahead and it's worked it out. But the reality is we speak at a slower rate. And in fact, I posted some content on this a while back. I always listen to YouTube videos at double the pace. Try it out. I know it sounds a bit funny when people speak with a high-pitched voice, but you get things done twice the time. For all of those of you who like to learn at an increased pace, so listen to YouTube's faster. Bottom right of any YouTube, there's a little cog which is your settings, and change it. Try to start with at 1 1/4 or 1.5 times the pace, and you'll find you actually get through a lot more. I usually like to listen to my YouTube videos twice anyway, so I can get that done in the time it takes someone to listen to it once. So maybe think about that. Stop talking, because actually if you're thinking ahead and about to speak, then you're not really paying too much attention to what they're saying. Okay, the T for stain, it's actually probably one of the most important ones. So the T stands for take notes. And I can't remember who it was, but it was someone once who said, listen with a pencil in your hand. And it's a really good point. And if you try it out, if you have a pad of paper and a pen or pencil, you'll find that as someone's speaking, you'll naturally take notes. If you put the pencil down or pen down, you're likely to not take notes as readily. So try it out. If you have a pad right there, whilst you're listening to someone, hold the pen and you'll just naturally take more notes. So taking notes, of course, means that especially on a lengthy call or when there's real detail you need about need and especially pain on behalf of that customer, you'll be much more effective at then being able to relay it, especially if there are real granular details you need to make note of and then refer back to later. Common sense, right? But you know, I spent a lot of time with sales execs over the last 15 years and half the time people don't bother, and you hear ridiculous things like, oh, I've got it all up here, Richard. Well, that's no use when you're ill and your manager's trying to close your sale for you, or 2 days later when you've called 30 people since then and you've also forgotten the details. Okay, so you need to know everything. And one of my colleagues once told me, I need to know the inside leg measurement of my clients. I want to know every single thing possible about them, and that's why taking notes is really the best way of doing things. So that's the T. A comes down to acknowledging. So this really is important for those of you working with phones rather than face-to-face sales. So there's a lot of visual communication that goes on that we're often unaware of, and when I'm mentoring or coaching in London, I have, of course, a room with people sitting on a desk around, you know, maybe in the boardroom. I have them all down the side, and as I'm talking, I can see if I've got eye contact. You know, I can see if these people are nodding and taking notes and paying attention. I can see if I've got engagement then. You know, if they were taking selfies of themselves or reading the newspaper, I'd maybe think I need to engage a little bit more effectively. But that's my way of understanding that I'm on point and I'm engaging with them. I don't need to hear them all the time saying, yes, that makes sense. Oh, okay. People don't do that because they're letting me talk. On the phone, it's different. You can't see someone nodding. And so what I call verbal nodding is something you need to do, which is just a little bit of acknowledgement as you go along. Yes, okay, all right, that makes sense. Go on, got it, that's interesting. Whatever it might be, because you want that person to speak more. And people prefer talking about themselves more than anything else. There was a study on this that was proven that levels of dopamine are at their highest. So you get emotional engagement when you're talking about yourself and of course about your company or product. So if you're speaking to your client, don't talk about you, talk about them, because they'll feel good about themselves through that conversation, and then by extension they'll feel good about yourself, about you. And so acknowledgement's important because it builds confidence, especially over the phone, that you're paying attention. And if there's confidence, then this person's going to feel comfortable. They'll then trust you. They're more likely to want to spend money with you or work with you long term. The I for S.T.A.I.N stands for interact, which is similar to acknowledge. But the difference here is that when the time is right, you then are going to summarize, just kind of go over points that I've mentioned and just show that you're really paying attention. So things like, so John, what you're saying is this, am I right? Or I understand then that your need is X, Y, and Z, or the real challenge at the moment is achieving whatever it might be. Am I right? Yes, so that's real interaction then, and it's what's called interactive listening as opposed to active listening where you don't speak and you just hear. So bearing that in mind, what you also want to be doing is asking good questions too. So if you watch my video on spin questions, that's part of interactive listening. Okay, so they're actually doing the talking, but you're punctuating it maybe with some questions or statements that essentially lubricate this conversation and keep it moving forward and keep them wanting to talk even more about themselves. If you remove interaction and acknowledgement, in fact, you end up with them giving you less information, shorter answers, and of course, therefore, less information that you can work with to again try and close a deal. So what you're looking to do finally with the letter N is have no distractions. This is a big one. If you work in a sales team or on a sales floor, you know, those of you who've been in a sales environment, you often know what it can be like. There can be lots of fun banter. I used to work in one when pretty much every hour of every day there's someone throwing a paper ball at someone, and you know, there's often a lot of fun and antics going on, which is great, and that's often part of that culture. But when someone's talking, don't think that you can focus on all that as well as pay attention to your client. And I said this to someone yesterday. I said, because I think they'd worked out their commission on their next piece of business would be something in the region of £1,000 or so for that week. And I said, that's £1,000, that phone call, and you're going to watch someone mucking about in the room. I said, you know, turn around and face the wall. Remember, the bandwidth of your brain means you can engage in other stuff as well, but you want to give it everything you've got. Part of your brain's going to be focusing on those 120 or 150 words per minute. The other part of your brain's going to be needs to be there to focus on things like what hasn't been said, how they're using tone or pitch or volume or pace when they're speaking as well. That's not a conscious thing, that's a subconscious thing that you kind of absorb by osmosis, and you sense how they're, you know, where they weight their emphasis in terms of things that are important to them. And if you aren't really listening properly because you're not paying attention, you're focusing on distractions and other things, you're gonna miss really what the key points are when it comes to what really makes them tick. And no distractions really does mean no distractions. I'm talking about don't drink, don't eat, focus on what they're saying, turn away from everything. If you need your computer screen or laptop on in front of you, then fine, that's understandable. A lot of people do digital sales, and of course there's an element of that involved. If there isn't, don't have your screen on. Simple. I did a sales role about 12 years ago when I didn't need a computer, and I turned it off. It was on my desk because that's what was standard at the time, just turned it off. I had my pen and paper and my phone, and that's all I needed. So these are kind of obvious things, but if you really value that client, and maybe another way to motivate you is if you really value the commission that you can make from the long-term relationship you're trying to foster, well, in sales you need to make sure everything they say stains your mind, okay? So S.T.A.I.N, stop talking, take notes, acknowledge, interact, and no distractions. So I hope that helps. Let me know if there's any more things you need a bit more understanding on, but those comments are really helpful, and the emails you're all sending me are excellent. So thank you very much for the support too. So let me know your thoughts. How do you listen effectively? Is there anything that really works for you? Anyway, have a great day. I'll speak to you soon.